and the New Culture Forum's own Rafe Heydel-Mankoo. He's also an historian and commentator. So, Rafe, I want to start with you because on The Quiet, you're a bit of a royal commentator. And, you know, we started off with what seems to be a crisis for the monarchy in some way. Looking forward 10 years first, what kind of a monarchy do you think we will have?
Well, I rather subscribe to King Farouk of Egypt's famous adage when he said that eventually there'll only be 5 kings left: the king of spades, clubs, diamonds, hearts and England. We have a wonderful ability in this country to evolve and adapt, and so whilst the British monarchy looks ancient, it's transformed itself time and time again. The monarchy of today is very different to the monarchy of the 90s, which again was very different to the monarchy of the 50s. And that's why our monarchy has survived, whereas, for example, those in Germany, France and Russia have failed. And so, whilst we're going through a blip right now, I wouldn't call this a full-blown crisis. If Prince William had decided not to fulfill his duties, we'd be in a full crisis. But as long as we can get through the next 20 years, a bit more work on the shoulders of the Princess Royal and Prince Edward than perhaps they would have expected for the next little while, until the children of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge grow up, we'll see the monarchy continuing very much as they are. A streamlined monarchy. We won't have all of the monarchy that we see today in the form of the Gloucesters and the Kents and the young Yorks, Beatrice and Eugenie. So it'll be really a monarchy that is streamlined, focusing very much on the heir and the direct line of succession.
So it'll be, is it right to say it'll be more of a presidential monarchy in a way? There's this one figurehead, as it were, you know?
There'll be the direct line, so you'll always have the sovereign, the Prince of Wales and the heir to the Prince of Wales. It'll be that holy trinity, if you want, the big three. If we can go from president to, you know, a World War II analogy of the big three, that's going to be the way the monarchy will always be seen from now on.
No one is saying that there will not be the institution here in 10 years.
No, I think you've put your finger on one of the big issues, which is the fact that under Victoria and Elizabeth you had young monarchs who captured the new spirit of the new Elizabethan age of 1952. And just think if King George VI had lived as long as his wife did, and the king didn't die until 2002, and Queen Elizabeth II had become queen in 2002, 50 years after she actually did, how would that have changed our attitude towards the sovereign? And I think it's the fact that we're going to have a series, because of medicine and science and people living longer, a series of old monarchs coming to the throne in the foreseeable future, lacking that vitality to engage and to invigorate a new generation of youth. And that idea, I think, might be, this is going perhaps beyond 2030, I think our monarchy, which is currently the last one not to do abdication, I think we might see a situation where monarchs in this country begin to abdicate at the age of 75 in order to try to capture some of that youth of monarchy. Monarchy actually predates the nation state, and marriages were alliances between foreign powers. And if you want to look at history, British monarchy is often today seen as being a rather ethnocentric British institution. It's always been very, very multinational. And you could argue that it's only been, with the exception of the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother, who's Scottish, it's only been since they stopped marrying other European royals and began to marry English commoners that we've had problems in the royal family, because they weren't raised in the tradition of knowing about service and duty. And that there needs to be some way of ensuring that they're sort of an apprenticeship school. And that's why Prince William was very good in this. Well, actually, Prince William ensured that Kate Middleton, as she then was, had a long time to consider the options. So she had several years, actually. And I thought it was very interesting that, you know, the future head of the Church of England, no one seemed to mind him living with Kate Middleton, as she got to understand the duties that she would be expected to fulfil, and had a long time to decide whether she wanted it. Yes. Whereas there was only a short courtship with Meghan and Harry.
Yes.
It is a story of the long march for the institutions yet again, because nowhere are the young of today getting that story. All that they receive is a story about democracy equals one man, one vote. You know, that's crude majoritarianism. That leads to mob rule, particularly in a parliamentary system of government, when you have an elected dictator, really, in the form of a prime minister with a strong majority.
And there isn't enough understanding of the Constitution.
You need to have the crown there, and that's not taught. And we're always basically taught, as Madeleine Albright said in America, we don't do kings. That's become the sort of attitude over in this country. And it's the failure of our university systems and our school systems to actually effectively teach people about the long history of the crown, the importance of separating those who hold power from those who actually rule. That distinction is not made any longer, and I think future generations, having been denied that education, may well go down the Republican path. And so if this next decade, I say, you know, in 79 Thatcher got elected, 2019 we've had Boris Johnson. He has the next 10 years to make Johnsonianism in the 20s, what Thatcherism became to the 80s, not just for the economy, but also for culture, and really try to reverse that long march that began in 97 in some way. And it depends on how bold he'll be. The irony are that the most democratic element in the House of Lords are the hereditaries, because they're actually elected to their position, unlike everybody else there. I mean, I did a report with Roger Scruton and Frank Field almost 10 years ago now, looking into reform of the House of Lords, because it is now neither fish nor fowl. We have the world's second largest chamber after China. Ours is the only chamber, apart from Iran, that has clerics in it. I mean, it's very hard to justify these things in this day and age. And yet, since 1911, we've been trying to reform this under Lloyd George, and we still haven't achieved it. And when we did try it on Tony Blair, it was done on the back of an envelope, which also got rid of the Lord Chancellor's position in a terrible way, and meddling around there. I mean, terrible constitutional balls up, if I can say, under Blair. But I fear that there is no vested interest, really, in the Conservative Party or the Labour Party tackling the House of Lords, because it suits them too much to keep it as it is.
Well, I think we will have a House of Lords
for a long time to come. I mean, firstly, the next 10 years, the Brexit will be the major issue. There are simply too many issues on the plate to start tackling something as major as the House of Lords. But the fact that you're going to have to deal with Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, there is hope for the House of Lords to become a sort of a regional assembly, as you have in America and Canada, for example, where the upper house deals with the regions. And so, as a quasi-federal, giving Scotland and Wales and England an allocation of seats there in order to represent the local issues. And I've advocated having non-partisan elections there, so that they're not tied to party politics, as is done in Nebraska, for example. These are independents who stand up, who were born and raised in an area, and stand up for local interests and local people, and advance those without fear of any whip telling them how to vote. And I think that would keep the independence of the House of Lords, which is very important. And I also like the idea of having a pantheon of the great, to have the best businessmen, the best scientists, the best sportsmen, the best people from the arts and industry, who can give all of their input. And of course, the greatest statesmen, Lady Thatcher and others. Why shouldn't they be able to have a role to play in Parliament after they've left office, if they have valuable contributions to make?